Namaskar from Deshsanchar's Diplomatic Eye. This is Mitra Bandhu Poudel. If this is your first time watching Diplomatic Eye, I would like to let you know that all of the episodes are accessible on both Deshsanchar's official English page and YouTube channel. This program's objective is to provide an analytical stance on a current subject involving diplomacy, foreign policy and international relations. Today I will speak about ongoing conflict between Hamas and Israel, perceptions of the experts on Nepal's foreign minister's trip to Israel and a desire for peace. Ladies and gentlemen, let's begin the 11th episode, Tiny Ray of Hope Amid Hamas-Israel War. It was October 7th, 2023. The time was 6:30 a.m. in Israel. According to the Israeli Defense Forces, IDF, Hamas militants launched 2,200 rockets at Tel Aviv and Jerusalem as well as southern and central Israel. Hamas asserted that at least 5,000 missiles had been launched, all of which had landed in southern and central Israel. Approximately an hour after the initial missile attacks, Hamas entered Israel via land, sea and air. 22 Israeli towns and army bases were attacked and both residents and troops were held hostages by Hamas. According to media report, around 350 Israelis, including women and children, lost their lives, while hundreds more were abducted and brought to Gaza. In armed attacks by the Palestinian Islamist group Hamas, 10 Nepali students were also killed and 4 others were injured on October 7. The war between Israel and Hamas, which broke out in an unexpected onslaught on October 7, 2023, was the most recent of 7 decades of bloodshed between Israelis and Palestinians, which has attracted foreign countries and destabilized the larger Middle East. Israel has 9.8 million people, with 73.6% of them Jewish, 21.1% Arabs and 5.3% others, according to the Israel Central Bureau of Statistics. Arab-Israel war, a string of armed clashes between Israeli and other Arab forces, were most notable in 1948 to 1949, 1956, 1967, 1973, 1982 and 2006. The 1948 Arab-Israeli war saw over 6,000 Israeli Jews and 10,000 Arab troops and civilians killed, while over 500,000 Palestinian Arabs were forcibly displaced. The Suez Crisis in 1956 saw a military assault on Egypt by Israel, France and Britain, resulting in 3,200 deaths and 5,500 injuries. The Six-Day War in 1967 saw Egypt, Jordan and Syria at war with Israel, while Arab armies receiving men and weapons from Algeria, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia and others. The war resulted in catastrophic losses for Arab nations, with over 11,000 deaths in Egypt and over 11,000 in Jordan. The Yom Kippur War in 1973 marked the start of the war, with Egypt and Syria violating ceasefire lines in the Sinai and Golan Heights. Israel eventually overcame Arab forces, but no significant geographical changes occurred. The 1982 Lebanon War resulted in 17,825 deaths and 30,203 injuries, with the highest death toll in southern Lebanon. The 2006 Lebanon War began as a military action in retaliation for Hezbollah kidnapping of 2 Israeli reserve soldiers. The conflict began on July 12, 2006 and lasted until a ceasefire brokered by the UN effect on August 14, 2006. The conflict reached a deadlock in 2006. These instances demonstrate the ongoing hostilities between Israel and the Palestinians. Media report following current Hamas-Israel war revealed that more than 900 people have died at a hospital in Gaza that was struck by a rocket on October 18, 2023. The number of fatalities keeps going up. The Israel-Hamas war has already caused over 3,000 injuries and approximately 1,228 dead in Israel. Similarly, more than 2,300 individuals have already lost their lives and 10,583 more have been injured in Gaza. During the course of recording this presentation, over 4,000 people had lost their lives in Palestine and Israel combined after October 7, 2023. Let's talk about Hamas. What is Hamas? Government of Gaza Strip in the Palestinian territories is carried out by Hamas, which is also known as the Islamic Resistance Movement. Because of its armed opposition to Israel, which has included suicide bombings and missiles strikes, the US and EU have branded Hamas as a terrorist organization. It receives material and financial backing from Iran, and some of its top officials are purportedly housed in Turkey. The Palestinian Liberation Organization, PLO's dominant party, and the government in the West Bank, Fatah, is its competitor and has renounced violence. History reminds that 5 months before the Oslo Accords were signed by Israeli Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin and PLO leader Yasser Arafat in April 1993, Hamas used suicide bombing for the first time. In accordance with the historic agreement, certain areas of the West Bank and Gaza were granted limited autonomy by the Palestinian Authority. Hamas denounced the agreements as well as the recognition of one another by the PLO and Israel, which Arafat and Rabin had agreed to in letters written a few days prior to Oslo Accord. A ceasefire is essential. We were heartbroken to learn that 10 of our innocent Nepali students had died in a barbaric, inhuman attack by Hamas on October 7. Only deaths occurred as a result of the protracted conflict. Most of them were women, children and elderly, innocent civilians. For humanity, maintaining peace is the most lucrative endeavor. When the dispute is settled swiftly, future success is enhanced. Israeli author, historian and professor in the Department of History at the Hebrew University in Jerusalem, Yuval Noah Harari, wrote in The Guardian that nothing could reverse what had already been done. Personal wounds would never fully heal and the deceased could not be brought back to life. But we must stop the situation from worsening. He continued by saying that many reckless religious extremists control the region. To defuse the crisis, outside powers must intervene. According to Reuters, President Xi Jinping was quoted by Chinese state media as stated on October 19th that China wanted the Israel-Hamas conflict to end as soon as possible and that Beijing was eager to cooperate with Arab states to find a long-term solution. She was speaking following the meeting with Egyptian Prime Minister Mustafa Medbouli. The senior Middle Eastern representative attended at China's Infrastructure Belt and Road Forum. The delivery of humanitarian goods to the Gaza Strip and in a sustainable manner through Egypt's Sinai Peninsula was agreed upon by Egypt and the United States on October 18, 2023. Let's talk about the humanitarian crisis in Gaza. Children, journalists and UN staff members are at higher risk. In order to help children and families in need, save lives and stop further suffering, UNICEF is urging an immediate ceasefire as well as unfettered humanitarian access. On October 25, UNICEF took to its social media page X handle in posting a statement detailing the horrifying toll. 2,360 children in Gaza had died and 5,364 had been injured, while over 30 Israeli children had also lost their lives. UNICEF's official webpage reads, "Time is running out. Children are dying at an alarming rate and being denied their basic rights. Even wars have rules. Hospitals and schools must be protected from bombings and they must not be used for military purposes in accordance with international humanitarian law." Recently, CNN stated in a statement issued by the Committee to Protect Journalists (CPJ) on October 27 revealed that since Hamas' initial strike on October 7, at least 29 journalists have died. According to CPJ, as cited by CNN, at least 24 of the dead journalists were Palestinian, 4 were Israeli, and 1 was Lebanese. CNN mentions in a separate story that as of Friday, October 27th, a statement from the UN Relief Works Agency for Palestine Refugees UNRWA said that 14 UN staff members have died in the last 24 hours, bringing the total number of UN personnel murdered in Gaza to 53. Amidst the current Middle East crisis, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres is in Kathmandu for 4 days. Nepal's initiative to bring Nepali people from Israel. Let's talk about this. People from Nepal living in Israel felt afraid as a result of the abrupt and unexpected attack by Hamas on October 7. Foreign Minister N.P. Saud traveled to Israel on October 12, 2023 with the goal of returning 250 Nepalis to the country. The foreign minister's visit to Israel received mixed reviews. While some people praised his efforts, others criticized him because he arrived there without much planning. In addition to meeting with his Israeli counterpart, he ought to send a message from the head of the government asking to see the Prime Minister. His diplomatic behavior, according to some detractors, was juvenile. In this situation, I was interested in learning from a few diplomats and a former army general whether or not the foreign minister should travel to Israel. Professor Mohan Lohani, the former ambassador of Nepal to Bangladesh, suggests that it was not necessary for foreign minister to fly for a few hours in order to escort back home stranded Nepalis from Israel. His personal presence in Israel could not solve the problem of bringing home 10 dead bodies of students killed by Hamas. He further asserts that government could have shown and should continue to show its concern over the safety of Nepali people in Israel through constant communication and coordination with Nepal Embassy in Israel and concerned line ministries in Kathmandu. Dr. Purna Sirwal also believes that there was no need to go foreign minister himself in the rescue flight unless there was a planned meeting with Israeli counterpart, with a view to conveying Nepali Prime Minister's message to Israeli Prime Minister about Nepal's position on what had happened. In absence of such meeting, he could have given a brief interview to the Israeli or Nepali media at the Tel Aviv airport and expressed solidarity with the Israeli people in order to make his visit a fruitful one, according to Dr. Silwal. It is important to keep in mind that Nepal and Israel established diplomatic relations in 1960 during the administration of Prime Minister B.P. Koirala. Israel was recognized as an independent state by BP in 1948, even though the rest of the world had not yet come to terms with its existence. As a matter of fact, Israel has a high admiration for Nepal. Ambassador Pradumna Bikram Saha states that one of the prime responsibilities of nation is to safeguard the interest of Nepalese at home and foreign land, and this move falls under nation's foreign policy. Shah reminds that we have had many such occurrences in the past, whether in Iraq or Afghanistan. However, we are doing this on ad hoc basis and lack guidelines to follow as and when such evacuation affairs need to perform. Shah candidly asserts that although leaders often use such occasion as political gimmick to win hearts of people, the move should be purely humanitarian. Let me draw your attention back to the Israel-Hamas confrontation. What would be the long-term solution of Hamas-Israel conflict? I posed this query to two professors from the West, a European and an American. Amsterdam-based professor and management expert Luc Hofstegen recalls that this dispute is maybe the most complex one we have ever seen. Its continual evolution has paralleled his lifetime. He further states that he has gone from supporting one side to the other over time. He remembers, I quote, "I have spoken to Israelis and Palestinians alike. Everyone I have met has been intelligent and well-intentioned." Unquote. Further adding, one thing they both agree on is that religious extremists on both sides of the conflict are the main cause of the conflict. Professor Hofstegen candidly asserts that these same crazes now hold governmental power, which is the same. With extremists, whether religious or political, he has never been able to have a two-way conversation or a respectable exchange of ideas and viewpoints. Everyone who is not on their side is inferior in their eyes. Professor believes that they have no problem getting rid of anyone who does not entirely concur with their actions and beliefs. Therefore, any diplomatic attempts to persuade them to sit down for talks will end in failure. In the meantime, people who want a decent life for themselves and their families are the war's victims. Professor Hofstegen firmly believes that a permanent peace can only be achieved when the fanatics on both sides are exterminated. He is worried that this is only a dream. Generation after generation has seen violence on both sides, and even after the geologists are gone, there will still be profound wounds to mend. The only functions that the world can perform are to contain the damage and offer humanitarian aid. However, some world leaders see military conflict as a chance to wreak more havoc and profit from it. A remedy then? All we can do is aid those working to numb the suffering and stop the fighting, according to Professor Hofstegen. Forbes featured Professor Dr. Ted Son, who serves as both the President and Chief Innovation Officer at Transcontinental University, USA, believes that this is a conflict based on belief systems that's entrenched in rivalry. A long-term solution would first need to address these beliefs. Education based on a worldview of a single species working together to thrive in this planet. Following that, a truly free market will enable people to learn to work together and see each other as people working to feed their families. Professor Son suggests that many people on both sides can only perceive the other as enemies. They can't see anything else because their belief systems have blinders on. Beliefs, in Dr. Son's word, are hard to break, especially after a long history of hardships. In conclusion, at least 5,791 Palestinians have died in Gaza as a result of the Israel-Hamas conflict, which has reached in October 25 on its 19th day. Since the October 7 attack by Hamas that murdered 1,400 Israelis, there have been 96 Palestinian deaths and 1,650 injuries due to unrest and Israeli operations in the occupied West Bank. Every day the number has been rising. What Yuval Noah Harari wrote in the Time magazine is something I would want to add. I quote, "This struggle for souls must be won. Israel has a responsibility to defend its territory and its population in its conflict with Hamas, but it also has a responsibility to defend its humanity. We are at war with Hamas, not with the Palestinians. Even in the midst of hostilities, all parties should uphold the fundamental human rights of Palestinian civilians who deserve to live in peace and prosperity in their own homeland." This is not only referring to Israel but also to Egypt, which has partially sealed its border with the Gaza Strip and shares it with Israel. Unquote. Any kind of terrorism is harmful to humanity. The world order will be shaped by a number of continuing global upheavals, including the intensifying Israel-Hamas conflict, the protracted war in Russia-Ukraine, and the tensions between the US and China. The continuous confrontation between Israel and Hamas is thought to have an impact on the next US election. The longer the conflicts persist, the more detrimental they will be to US politics. Media reports states that Arab and Muslim Americans, along with their friends, have taken issue with US President Joe Biden's stance on the Israel-Hamas conflict. They fear that if he does not do more to prevent a humanitarian crisis in Gaza, they won't support him in the 2024 election. So America's and its partners and allies' role is crucial in reducing the confrontation between Israel and Hamas. Though given its geostrategic location, Nepal cannot do much to stop this conflict. It would be prudent if the political leadership demonstrated autonomous and non-aligned foreign policy in a consistent and responsible manner. With this, let me conclude this episode. I will come up with the contemporary issue in my next presentation. Thanks for watching me. Thank you very much.